Is eating non-Chalav Yisrael the same as eating non-kosher? So I think it's first very important to bring out a point which a lot of people make a mistake in. A lot of people say, well, the whole reason that we need to eat Chalav Yisrael is just in case they mixed in non-kosher milk into it. That's incorrect. The Torah gives us two aspects. There's min ha-Torah, midoiraisa, and there's midrabanan. Things which are Torah laws and things which are rabbinical laws. The rabbinical laws are just as important and even more important. The Gemara tells us, chamurim divrei soifrim yoser migufa shel Torah. The rabbinic laws are even more important than the Torah laws, to the extent that the Rambam writes that in a Torah law, it's either a positive commandment or a negative commandment. When it's a rabbinic law, Hashem told us both a positive, listen to what the rabbis tell you, and a negative, don't steer away from what the rabbis told you. The concept of chalav akum, of milk that was milked by a non-Jew and a Jew was not watching at the time, is something which the rabbis instituted as a rabbinic law, which means it's not kosher. Not because there may be non-kosher milk mixed into it, but because that's what the rabbis instituted, is that this is not kosher because it itself is not kosher. And that's something which is important to remember. That's the concept of chalav akum. It's halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It's something which is brought down in all over in the Jewish law. Now, to go in short about the idea of whether if I'm sure and certain that a non-Jew, that they didn't mix in non-kosher milk into it, can I then say that it's all right? So there's one opinion, and that's the Ridvaz, who was a rabbi in Egypt in the time of the Rishonim, Rabbi David ben Zakkai. He says that the rabbis instituted it for a reason, and if the reason doesn't apply, for example, if it's very expensive non-kosher milk, or if it's not available non-kosher milk, there is no non-kosher milk to be found, he says that then it would be allowed. The Pri Chadash follows him, and he says that in Amsterdam, the Portuguese community relied on this leniency of the opinion of the Ridvaz. However, that was in that time, in the time of the Ridvaz and the Pri Chadash. Today, all the rabbis, both Ashkenazic rabbis, the Ashkenazic rabbis, first of all, say that the Ridvaz and the Pri Chadash were both Sephardic rabbis, and therefore it doesn't apply because all the Ashkenazic rabbis say different. However, the Sephardic rabbis also say that the Ridvaz and the Pri Chadash were only one opinion, and today everyone follows the opinion that it doesn't matter if it's available or not available, because it's a gzeira, it's a decree that the rabbis made, and they had their reasons for the decree. And once they made it, it's not kosher, it's a rabbinic non-kosher. Now there is a heter. There is a heter from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, a very famous heter, and I'm not going to go into it now. But if someone wants to follow the heter, that means they follow all the opinions of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein as well, which include also things which are stringencies. If he's your rabbi and you follow him, that's one thing. And the truth is, even if he is your rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein himself writes that one should, a ben Torah, someone who's careful about Torah, shouldn't eat non-Chalav Yisrael and shouldn't rely on that. And he writes, interestingly enough, he says, I myself don't rely on it. To the extent that he says something which is an original concept, and that is usually when someone, for example, will be careful to eat glatt kosher meat. Glatt kosher means that the lungs are completely smooth and there's no pimples on the lungs. Most of us are careful with that. If you cook in the pot non-glatt kosher meat, you're not allowed to kasher the pot. You're not allowed to say that I don't want to eat being cooked in the same pot, because then you're saying that someone else is eating non-kosher. That's forbidden. Nevertheless, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein himself, the one who made the heter about Chalav Yisrael, says that if you're careful about Chalav Yisrael, which includes himself, because he writes that I am myself am careful, and he writes to a different yeshiva which said it costs too much money to buy Chalav Yisrael. Can we buy non-Chalav Yisrael? And he said you have to spend all the money in the world to buy Chalav Yisrael. But he says that if you're careful about it, then even the pots and even the kalim, even the utensils that were used for non-Chalav Yisrael have to be kashered. You're not allowed to use the utensils that non-Chalav Yisrael was cooked because it's considered by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the one who made the heter, non-kosher. Now, obviously for a Lubavitcher, we're ba'asrei de Rav, we follow our Rebbe, and our Rebbe didn't follow this heter, didn't believe that it's a leniency. In fact, the Rebbe is very, very strong about Chalav Yisrael to the extent that the Rebbe says it causes sfekas and amunah, causes questions and doubts in faith when a person eats not Chalav Yisrael. And it causes all types of things. Many times the Rebbe spoke also about physical health, that keeping Chalav Yisrael is going to help someone also in physical health. So it's obviously a Lubavitcher follows the Rebbe, and there's no way whatsoever of having a heter. Those who do follow Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, they should follow also what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, which is that it's best for someone to, yes, be careful, and that he himself was careful about it, and therefore to actually be careful to the extent of realizing that the kalim themselves, the utensils with which non-Chalav Yisrael was cooked, cannot be used, and they have to first be kashered in order to use it for other milk.